Knowledge is power, or at least it's helpful information. Hi, I'm Esther Ryder, broker owner of Ryder Realty. I want to share my knowledge of almost 20 years as a realtor to teach you some very helpful information every buyer and seller might want to know. Aimed with this information, you should feel more comfortable in the process, have some of your questions answered in advance, and be ready to find your agent and successfully buy or sell a home. Thanks for joining us. Hi everyone, welcome back to another learning experience with Ryder Realty. Today we're talking about well and septic and the differences. So I'm going to start out with a story. I think growing up, you don't really think about the differences, you just have one or the other. I had well water with septic most of my childhood. My husband had it his entire childhood. And so it's just not a big deal. It is what it is. Well, when I was selling real estate and I had been licensed for a few years, I was selling a house, 10 years old, super nice house, nice allotment. Again, not a very new house, not a very old house, just 10 years old. And a buyer came, loved the house. They had inspections. They had well and septic inspections as well because that's normal. The guy backed out. The inspection was completely fine. He just backed out because he said, pretty much a quote, "I didn't have well and septic growing up and I don't understand it and I'm afraid of it." Can I just tell you, I was livid. Like, here's my seller, we're ready to close. Well, luckily we're only in the inspection period, but we're all planning on it. We're like kind of moving forward towards that. Inspection was great because the house wasn't old. And this guy literally backed out because I had a septic. Now, keep in mind, these were like 2-acre lots. Like, very clearly, he should have known that it had a septic or been able to ask. I mean, it was in the middle of a cornfield. There's no way he could have thought that that had city utilities. I mean, if you've grown up in Ohio, I don't care if you do live in a city, you at least understand that out in the country that's likely. And if he truly didn't, which is fine, let's say that, then his realtor should have said, okay, well, we're having these inspections and you are having a well and septic inspection. That's because it has a well and septic because it's out in the country. And so he just backed away. He was done. Well, the thing is that a well and septic isn't something to be afraid of. It's just good to know the differences. I wouldn't back out of a house if it had well and septic, but I wouldn't specifically buy it for that. Just like I wouldn't back out of a house if it had city water, but I wouldn't necessarily personally buy it because of that. Having said that, there are lots of things that come into play here. So first of all, it can be area. So again, we're talking about Ohio. So in Ohio, you know, how their things do, what they look like, whatever, might be different than another state based on soils or all kinds of things. I am not the person to ask about science type stuff or septic for that matter. But I do want to talk to you about the differences, at least some of the basic differences in what you're going to see if you're buying or selling a house. So one thing is that some people have a preference to well water, or they have a preference to city water. I have only heard people specify that they like well water. I'm sure there are people who have a preference either way. Here's my disclaimer. I don't like water at all. I've been forcing myself to drink it, and I'll drink it at restaurants like covered in lemon, but I'm not a water fan, so I'm not the person to ask in terms of preference, other than I know that some people have very strong preferences about that. So that could be one difference. But one thing to keep in mind is that well water, just like different cities, their water can taste different. Well water can also taste different from place to place. So for example, one of my sons is a huge water drinker and he loves the water at my in-laws' house. They live probably, 2 or 3 miles away from us. We have city water, they have well water. He will literally take gallons of jugs, go to their house, fill it up, put those jugs in our refrigerator. And then before he had his license, he would say, "Mom and Dad, will you drive me to Grandma and Grandpa's? I want water." But he had a friend who lived within a mile of there, probably more like a half of a mile from there, and he had well water, and my son did not like it at all. He did not care for that water, which is so interesting to me because the two homes were not that far apart. Again, I'm not a well expert. I'm not a septic expert. I don't know why that was like that other than to tell you I found it interesting, and so I'm sharing it with you. But another difference could be expense. So a septic system to install is way more money than tapping into city utilities. So certain areas you don't have a choice. Obviously, if it's in the country or whatever, you're going to have well and septic. If it's in the city, you're going to have city utilities. But some people, that's a big expense that might kind of determine if it's a new build, for example, where they're going to build. The another option you might have is you might have county sewer or whatever. So when we had a house before, a couple houses ago, we had county sewer, but we had a well. So these houses were relatively close together. So they ended up putting in a county sewer system. And then I think it was a county, actually considered a county sewer system. There were different stations throughout the county, and then everybody had their own well. And so what happened, as a side note, is that people would have to put these in. It was like $5,000 for most of them to get it done, and then a $2,500 tap-in fee. So I was selling houses, and people would tell me my house is worth X amount more, $7,000, $5,000, whatever more, because I had this done. Well, no, you had to have it done in a certain time frame that was required by the county. People expect to have flushing toilets and water, so that flushing toilet concept with the septic or the county hookup now means that you have sewer. It doesn't mean that your house is worth that much more because it was required. So that's just a little tidbit of information I'm passing on for free. So that is one thing, is that taste can be a positive or negative, or a plus or minus depending on how you're looking at it, or just a difference. Expense can play in there as well. There is the upkeep. So a septic or a well is going to require more upkeep. That doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's just you need to stay on top of it. So when I first started selling, it was supposed to be every 5 years you were supposed to pump. I would say, well, I've been selling for 18 years. Since then, they've changed that guideline to every 2 to 5 years. I want to give you 2 examples. I sold a house a number of years ago. It was one of those houses where you would walk in and think, oh my goodness, these people are on top of everything, like super clean, super nice. They were elderly, and yet they kept a spotless house. So, she was doing all the cleaning and stuff, and super impressive. And they had built their house in the 50s or 60s. So it was one owner house. And everything was supposed to be fine, like super clean home inspection, right? Really well taken care of. And then we had our septic inspection, and it failed. And here, they had never had it pumped ever, is what the septic company told me. And I was like, oh, wow, how does that even work? Like, wouldn't it fill up? Again, I am not a septic person. I leave that to the professionals. But in my mind, I'm thinking, how do you not ever pump it? Only to learn since then that I've known some other people who have been the same way. They actually pumped theirs because they smelled it and saw it because the tank was full and overflowing. So that was a failed septic that we had to have replaced because it wasn't maintained. So that is just something to be aware of. Again, it's not, from what I've seen, difficult to maintain them. I think our entire married life, we've never had a septic and only had a well one time. So my experiences are what they are from having clients. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know as much as I know. Not that I know a lot, but I do know from some experiences that there is that upkeep there. So again, not anything to be afraid of, just to be aware of. You can have those inspected when you buy a house. So just like you might have a home inspection contingency, you might have a termite contingency, radon. If your house has well or septic, you would also have that same contingency with the same idea. They're going to check them, they're going to make sure they're okay, and if there are things that need to be done, then you can negotiate that with the seller. Some counties require a septic to be done whenever a house would transfer to a new owner, so it's good to know that. That's going to vary county by county. And if you send us a message and you're asking about a specific county, we're happy to let you know that. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to say that can change county to county. So just be aware of that. Something your realtor should be able to help you with and guide you with. So here are your takeaways for the well and septic. Number 1, know what the house has. Sometimes they're a little tricky where you might think they're city utilities or they're not. It's just good to know in advance. Number 2, if it has them, do you want that to be tested if you're buying a house? Number 3, if you're in a house that has well and septic or septic, make sure you maintain those. Get it pumped if it needs to be pumped, be on a routine. Make sure you use a reputable company, because I'm telling you, not all of them are. Some have been known to not be reputable. We'll just leave it at that. And the last thing is, if you're buying a house and you love water, I get asked this question a lot. How does the water taste? To which I have to disclose that I don't like water, and in my pop drinking days, I could go a month and not even have any water. It was not good. Now I have it. I kind of force it down. I don't love it. So to ask me the taste, how water tastes, I'm always going to tell you, But there is nothing wrong with sampling it. Some people feel like there's a smell to certain waters and they want to turn it on for a minute and smell under the faucet. That's fine. Sometimes people want to have a little sip of it to see if they like it, because they are big water drinkers and the taste of that is important to them. That's fine. Don't be afraid to do that if you know. And the last thing is, make sure you discuss with your agent all of these things. They can guide you in that. They can answer any questions. They can get reports of when it was last taken care of. They can even maybe supply you with a cup to try the water and see what you think. So I hope this helped. I mean, there's lots of components and things to think about with the house, and sometimes well and septic are not something to think about, but we do get questions, so we wanted to bring that up to you guys. I hope this helped. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you next time. Have more questions after today's episode? Please reach out. You can find our information in the show notes. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Have a blessed day.